the specialist of the strange. Meets the age of darkness. Eyes in the sky will stare upon the middle of the sky. And ponder the insanity that comes from their adventure. Welcome to the Bald and Bonkers.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can't get over that trailer because that trailer's awesome. Made
I know.
by
How am I supposed to top that for the new year, man?
I know, but I love that trailer. Listen, guys, we are joined tonight by Christine Gomez, and I would like to say thank you for coming on the show, Christine.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited.
You think you're excited? We've been so excited that you've coming on. I mean, you're like, oh man, can I watch it? You have got one of the ultimate shows on YouTube. So there you go, a compliment for you there. You know?
Thank you.
So my friend Dakota, he's all quiet. See, my friend Dakota here, he stays all quiet. And but as we say, he's probably formulating questions. So I'm going to give the floor tonight to Dakota, and I'm going to allow him to ask you a couple of questions.
Oh. All right. Well, first of all, you guys, once again, thank you for coming on. You know, like I said, we listening to several of your episodes. You clearly know what you're talking about, which is a huge plus when we're dealing with this type of thing. So you were teasing us before we went on about what got you into this. So what made you dive into this ever so crazy thing that's going on these days?
The mad world of YouTube. Could you tell us?
UFOs go.
It's a big topic, and I was really lucky to be brought up in the topic by my father. He was a ginormous fan of the Twilight Zone, and obviously it's my favorite TV show of all time from the late 1950s, early to the 1960s. It's black and white. You really can't get any better than that. And with that show in particular, what's so special about that one is that at the time, it was talking about very taboo topics. But with that show in particular, it never really gave you a conclusion when the show ended. Instead, it opened your mind to ask all of these questions, like, well, what really happened? What's going to happen next? When now, in today's world, a lot of the TV shows that we watch, a lot of the movies that we watch are kind of like, they all die in the end. The end. And you're like, oh, my heart, like, that's the worst ending ever. But with the Twilight Zone, it wasn't like that. And so that's what really got me started into it. But of course, when you're 5, 6, 7 years old, you're not going to be like, I have all these questions. Let me go to Google and do all of my research. What does this really mean? Of course, you're not there yet. Your brain capacity is not there. And so, as I say, there's a really big difference with being interested in something and then actually going out and doing the research. A lot of us growing up, we read fairy tales. Sometimes we like certain foods, but that doesn't mean that we know how to cook the foods or we actually know how dragons might, like what they eat and how they catch their prey, for example. Okay. We don't know that until we go out, read books, read fairy tales and try to find out the information. So I feel like the older you get, the more mature you become. You actually want to go ahead and really understand the nuts and bolts of what the heck is going on. So
that's a good question.
So from there, then a few years later, when I was traveling to India, I did have my own sighting where I saw several orbs, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And we won't go into too much detail today because it's a really, really long story. But that's really what sparked it. And then I went into college. I moved very, very far away from home. Bless. and and at the time I was thinking, I have so much free time. What can I do with my free time? Okay. And I went ahead and I started going through YouTube and through MUFON, and I started collecting UFO sighting videos and placing them into my own program to enhance it, stabilize it, zoom in, add filters if it needed it, to go ahead and try to decipher to the best of my ability and the viewers to distinguish what these UFOs might actually be. Because we've all heard the argument, everyone has a cell phone. Why are all the pictures so blurry and blah, blah, blah? And I was getting so exhausted with that argument. I'm just thinking, like, look, I don't have the answer, but I can try to provide you the best information that I have without placing my bias or my opinions on the subject, because that can, as we know, can totally ruin our data. And it can also affect how we communicate that with others.
Yes.
If we already have a preconceived idea of what it is, we're not going to actually listen to other people and their opinions and their facts.
Yes.
Instead, we're going to be like, well, it is this because I say it is, because I believe that it is. And that you might actually be wrong. And with this field in particular, the UFO phenomenon, no one has all the answers. If anything, people might only have maybe one answers out of thousands of them.
What is your thoughts in the latest UFO revealments from, say, the Pentagon and what's been getting released? What is your thoughts on that?
I think for the UFO community, especially like UFO Twitter, right? It's rather disappointing because we're expecting the real meat and potatoes, you know. But I think for the public, everyday people, it's opening their eyes to the subject that they never really even considered to be legitimate. Now, I know with my generation in particular, we grew up with alien movies, TV shows, cartoons, like t-shirts, plush dolls, and all of this stuff. So for us, it's not difficult to go ahead and comprehend, being like, yeah, there's definitely life outside of where we are on this beautiful little planet. But we don't actually consider the US government to actually say, we might have some information that could provide evidence that maybe we don't actually know what's going on. Now, with the Pentagon stating this, they're never going to say, at least in my opinion, they're not going to say, yes, aliens are real. Yeah. They've always been real. They've always been there, this, that, and the other. But instead, they're going to kind of throw a softball and say, we simply do not know what it is. And I think that's a really big step for any government to actually admit the fact that they do not know what it is.
They can't admit that because they've covered it up for so many years. If they had to come out and say, oh yeah, we actually found a craft in Roswell, then God knows what people would go back to them and say, what did you not tell us for? Why did this not happen? And I think you're talking amazing. I mean,
Well, they're putting themselves in a corner. A lot of people are now pushing for UFO transparency, and we see it online every single day. And if the government, the Pentagon, were to state, yeah, aliens are real and they're here, that would cause so much mistrust amongst the public, and there could be who knows what could actually happen. Now, but if they say, we do not know what it is, but here is some information, maybe we'll start dropping papers every 6 months, like the preliminary report that was released in June. We'll be getting a lot more of those. That'll kind of ease the public in to potentially government gain trust again from the public, that they are giving information to the public, both classified and unclassified paperwork, to say, well, you know what, we don't know what it is, but it could, but based off the data that we have, maybe some pictures, maybe some radar footage, which we don't actually know if that'll be in the unclassified version, but if it was, that, at least to my understanding, it's very possible that could potentially gain trust from the public back into the government.
Yes. I mean, Dakota, the CIA have started leaking stuff already. They've started releasing files, and there was one of the files that Dakota here found out, and it was a speech that President Kennedy was going to be releasing, but then he got assassinated. Do you know about this speech? Have you known? Have you heard?
Oh, please tell it to me.
Oh, it's Dakota. Off you go, my friend.
Well, it wasn't through a CIA leak. It was a university. Yeah. The name of it escapes me, but basically, they started finding notes of a speech that Kennedy was allegedly supposed to give the day he was assassinated, where he flat out says, "We are not alone in this universe." Yeah. And it's been several things where, conveniently, as I start digging more into the Kennedy assassination, things surrounding it, a lot of the conspiracies. Oh, he was coming out with this. Oh, it's because he was fooling around Marilyn Monroe. Even she was getting ready to leak to it. Conveniently, now I'm from a small town area, so it doesn't take much to knock out internet. But convenient, every time I start digging into something, to the point where I resorted to spiritual summonings, where you try to get voices coming through like a spirit box, and it starts sounding like somebody who sounds like Kennedy coming through. Everything starts failing.
Yeah, it's like he's even had strange. I mean, he's actually had visits from blacked SUVs and stuff. What was it? A vehicle with unmarked plates outside your house? Mm-hmm. Because he's been obviously raking through these documents. I mean, it makes you wonder what's actually out there in the people's grasp that people have not seen yet, what people have not found yet. Have you found anything, Christine? Have you found anything? Yeah.
When it comes to John F. Kennedy, it's not something that I have looked into thoroughly. So the short answer is no. But that would be something interesting to look at. And as we know, there are quite a few presidents that went ahead in a very roundabout way stating either one, when they get elected, that they're going to release the information about UFOs, which is what Trump did, what Bernie Sanders wanted to do, what Marco Rubio wanted to do when he was running as well. And then you have also Ronald Reagan giving his most infamous speech amongst our community. Yeah. Okay, and then he even mentioned during the release of the movie E.T., there were tears coming out of his eyes, stating that if only people knew that this story was true. Yeah. And that was paraphrased, okay? Like, that's not exactly what he said, but in a roundabout way. So even though I do not know a lot about Reagan and his push for UFO transparency or UAP transparency now, it's been continuous amongst the United States presidents. Now, when it comes to other presidents around the world or dictators, things of that nature, it would be interesting to see if that was also the case for other countries.
Was there no that? What was that? Was it the Israeli? Who was the one that came out? The Prime Minister.
The
defense, and
he Meshed.
Yeah, and he actually came out and said that they've been having dealings with extraterrestrials for quite a few years now. I mean, people made a fool of him, but can you imagine for 1 second if he is right, and I think he is right, we have been dealing with UFOs. Look at the technology that we've got. How quick it's jumped, the technology in 60 years?
It was fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was a very fast evolving of technology and of everything in between. So it would be easy for the mind to go ahead and imagine that it's that the human race had got their advancements due to alien technology. But then there's another more plausible explanation that maybe we're just quickly evolving now that we have the foundation laid out. Yeah. So it can really go both ways, and I think it really just depends on where you look for your information. And kind of like how we said backstage before we went live, it's when you already have a preconceived idea, you're only going to find information that backs up your opinion, that backs up your claims. You're not actually going to look for something that contradicts what you already placed as fact. So with either having it being aliens have advanced our technology or we already grew our foundation, for many people, they're only going to attempt to find the data or the facts that back up what they already believe.
Yeah. Dakota?
First off, thank you. That is a point I've been trying to drill into this dude's head for a while now.
So that's my co-host. Cheek from my co-host there, ladies and gentlemen.
I was like, with a lot of that, in my honest opinion, it almost mocks human potential when people are just assuming that, oh, aliens gave us all this. Like, no, we just have some really intelligent people. Okay, maybe aliens helped out along the way, but human beings are capable of a lot more than what people realize these days. If maybe people stop complaining on Twitter about little things and actually start going out to the world, maybe they see that.
It's we're talking about backstage, Nicola. Let's take Nicola Tesla. Now, he was one of the most amazing people. I've read books and stuff about him. And then we were talking about the Mandela effect. What's your thoughts, Cristina, on Nicola Tesla? What do you actually think of that guy?
So when I was doing my research for a show about the Montauk Project and the Philadelphia experiment, Nicola Tesla came up. And I was going through Google, and I see a picture of him really old. And I'm like, who is that guy? I click on it. I'm like, okay, let me read the Wikipedia of Nikola Tesla. And he's like, well, he died in his 80s in a hotel room. And I'm thinking, hold on, that's not what I remember. I was taught in school that he died in his 40s in his lab or something like that, along those lines. Yeah. So I asked the question live with Jimmy Church and everyone that was watching, and I said, how do you remember Nikola Tesla dying? Okay, maybe I was given the wrong information. Maybe my memory was shot and I totally forgot. But the more research I was doing, I was like, it's very possible that this could be related to the Mandela effect. Now, the Mandela effect, for those that might not know too much about it, it's still classified as a conspiracy theory. So there isn't really any real strong evidence, at least publicly, that can go ahead and state the Mandela effect is real, where one realm is entering another realm, or one parallel universe is entering our universe. It still hasn't been proven. But regardless of that, if you watch a lot of the YouTube videos, if you read some threads, I guess on Reddit, and you see all these bits and pieces, you're like, yeah, you know what? I remember it like that, and now it's not like that anymore. Regardless of if you agree with it or not, I think it's beautiful to allow your imagination to run on all of these possibilities, that there's so much that we do not know about this earth, about this universe, that could be a possibility. And we're not stating that it is fact. We are not stating that, yes, this is true, even though I don't have evidence. All we're saying is that it's a mere possibility. And I think that adds so much color, so much flavor to life when you can just step outside of the box and say, well, you know what? It might not be real. Like, for example, people don't believe that fairies are real, but you can still have that fascination about them.
Yeah. It's fascinating that how something like that could come about. I mean, how something like the Volvo badge or the Ford badge could change. It makes you wonder, how could that actually happen? I mean, what, have they been sending people back in time, changing the past, and it's coming true, alternate realities? Who knows? Who actually knows? In the mind, here's a Scottish word for you, boggles when you think about that. What do you think, Dakota?
It's definitely something that would be hard to test. One of the more convincing theories in favor of the Mandela effect shockingly ended up with Pokemon, where someone posted on Reddit, oh, what was your favorite Pokemon? Then this person posted one that was not in any of the games, and all of a sudden years later, when they start releasing the beta versions of it, turns out that this particular one was in the beta files that only members of Nintendo had access to.
Dun, so that was dun. My favorite is Snorlax, because he just looks like the most cuddly. I'm not gonna lie.
It's something that I've never been one for, But I'm Scottish, so that maybe explains it.
I don't know.
So Dakota, what amazing question have you got for Christine? Because I can see you there. You can see the wee cogs ticking over. He's got something he wants to ask you.
Well, are you familiar with the CE5 protocols?
I've read it. I've seen it, not in real. Well, yeah, I've seen it. So I know about it, but it's not something that I've done personally.
I was going to ask if you've ever tried it, if you've had any experiences with it, because we've started making it almost a regular thing, and we've had people go into these trances, lights coming out of the sky that respond to us, like say, "Oh, can you do like a little dance in the sky?" We'll have radios going to where there's voices coming through saying, turn around," and all of a sudden, and I have this on video, where all of a sudden, towards the direction of the sunrise, there's this bright ball of light that's just flying towards me.
Yeah.
No.
It's actually amazing, that app. It's an app, is it Dr. Stephen Greer that's made the app, and obviously he tells you how to like channel them and bring through. But Christine, did you not say backstage you've seen a UFO once?
I have, but before we go into that, talking about CE5, while I remember this thought, it usually leads me to this specific question. If these entities are so advanced based off of our knowledge on them for the last few centuries, from all our history and our stories that have been told for the generations, why are they, in your opinion, or whoever's listening, why would these advanced beings go ahead and listen to what us ants have to say and actually command them what to do, to show up and to dance and to twirl and things like this? And so I'm like, is that ignorance? Is that egoic to have someone do what we want them to do, like lab rats, when we in fact know that they're a lot more advanced than we could ever perceive? Or is it something else entirely? Are they just trying to open our minds to the possibility, or to the fact, for those that have encountered CE5, that we are not alone in the universe? So it leads me to all of these questions, and I simply cannot find an answer to why, for those that have encountered CE5 and say that it works, how it works, and why.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried, I'll admit, I've tried it. I have tried it. I did it outside one night, way into the hills in the Scottish Highlands, and I tried it. I played the tones, and I did see a black triangle. I did see it. I seen it with my own eyes, and I can't explain it to that. I can't explain what it did. I seen it. It was sitting there, and it just disappeared. I don't know. It's maybe. It's like you were talking before. Like, everybody's got phones and like taking pictures of these UFOs. But you look at the latest iPhones, the latest other phones with the bestest cameras on them. Why is there no much?
Well, I mean, they're
evidence?
good for selfies, but they're not good to actually look outside.
Oh yeah,
yes.
The vanity is real there.
Yes. Yeah, it's like a lot of it, as I was talking to Dakota the other night, we're on YouTube and on Facebook and all that. There's loads of images of UFOs, and 99% of them are faked. You can tell straight away that they're faked. But there is the odd few that are real. But as you say, are they here to try and awaken us? I think they are. I think they're here to try and awaken us. Yes, we're ants to them. They're millions of years more advanced. If you think about it, how far away is the nearest habitable planet from Earth? How long it would take us to get there with our current technology? And they can travel. It's there you go. I'm going to say it again. Mind-boggling. It's amazing, in fact, how their technology must work and what it's like.
Yeah, if only the public knew how that information, how that technology works, and how it could be used in today's society to take care of our Earth, because as we know, right, and I think, which has been a big argument for a while, is corporate greed, right? If alien technology did come out, and if all those crashes are true that have happened since Roswell onward, even before that, and if the military really did pick up those craft materials, right, and tried to reverse engineer, like what Bob Lazar said he did in S4 next to Area 51, and if that information was given to the public to go ahead and remove fossil fuels to probably prevent poverty, and all of these things that we're struggling with our life today, then there's the argument of saying, well, then there's corporate greed. If we did have that technology, if we did get rid of fossil fuels, if we no longer had poverty or illnesses and sickness and death and all of these things, no one would make any money. No, everyone would be happy among us people, but for those on top, at least allegedly, there would be no profit in it. So it would be best, in their opinion, again, this is from my opinion, but what I'm assuming that they would say was, if it doesn't help them, they're not going to bring it out. They're not going to provide that information to anybody.
Yeah.
So it's heartbreaking how greed can just make the world go round.
It's madness. I mean, you think about it. I'm 40 years old. I can remember when cars were really polluting, really bad, right? And you think about it the way it is now. I mean, that's saying they're trying to leave oil behind and they're jumping into the electric side of things now. It just doesn't seem to make sense. There was all this money to be made with all this oil that they've found throughout the world, and now they're throwing that away because there's money to be made through lithium batteries and stuff like that. But what people don't realise is lithium batteries are highly toxic and very hard to recycle. And the damage, oh my god, the damage that anywhere where lithium is mined is toxic. And it's money. They're leaving the old technology behind, right? They're taking the oil, putting it away, and now they're going to the batteries. So what's going to be after the batteries, I wonder.
The only good thing about old cars back in the day was how strong they were. You can get into a car crash, and your car would be fine. Now, if you just hit a bug, right, you get this huge dent.
Yeah, I will admit that. We used to have a Volvo. We used to have a Volvo, a 1989 model. There you go, there's another one. And this thing was like a tank.
Oh,
this
yeah,
thing
but
was
it
a
eats
tank.
gas like a beast. I mean,
10
the only
miles
downfall...
to the gallon.
Oh, no.
I mean...
that's so bad.
Oh, dear. Oh, consider the vehicles today that are hybrids that get like 60, 70 miles to the gallon. My God, the technology. As you say, the technology.
Yeah, it's insane. But I mean, again, like if I ever had a kid, I would buy them like a 1990 car, so that they get into a car crash, they'll be safe. Everything will be fine.
Yeah. When in my day, when I passed my driving test, the cars didn't have airbags. They didn't have electric windows. You had to wind them down.
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was a thing. I mean, I'll tell you guys a secret. I failed my first driving test.
Oh, so
I passed the second one.
I failed my first one and passed my second one. So there you go.
I totaled the car in driver's ed, and they still gave me a license. So
no way, Dakota. I don't believe that.
No, I wasn't found at fault, so that's
okay.
It does make you wonder. Like, see, technology and something, we could clean this planet up. I mean, can you imagine the world? What it would be like if the aliens, like, say the aliens turned up tomorrow and says, right, we're going to give you clean energy, we're going to clean the planet up. As you say, there would be the few that be like billionaires. The billionaire's most fear, someone told me once, a billionaire's most fear is waking up one morning and realising they're not a billionaire anymore. And that's what would happen. So can you tell us a wee bit about your UFO experience? I'm excited, you know.
A few years back, I went on a spontaneous trip to India with a group of friends, or like a group of like people, and we were stopping by this one town, and we saw this sadhu, or a holy man, or a guru, right, whatever you want to call him. Yeah. And briefly, we were like, "Hey, what's a really good place we can just go ahead and see some ruins, some temple ruins?" And he's like, "You know what? Let me take you somewhere." And he didn't give us any explanation. So we're like, okay, yeah, I mean, we trust this guy. It's not a big deal. We don't know him, but everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. So we take a bus for a few miles, or I guess a few kilometers there, right? And then we walked another mile, and we enter this temple, and it's like practically demolished from centuries ago. And he said, and this is going to get interesting, he goes ahead and he's just kind of sitting there. We're all enjoying the temple. We're enjoying the day. Everything is beautiful. And then as it becomes to be dawn, right, and we see the stars and everything's beautiful, or dusk, right? Dusk, not dawn. Dusk. The Guru went ahead and said, okay, everyone, guys, like, just relax. And and stop focusing on whatever that you're doing, whatever that is. I'm going to go ahead and sit in meditation and just look up in the sky, and you just enjoy yourself.
Yes.
So a few minutes after, we see these 3 orbs. And the first one, it was getting bigger and bigger because it was getting closer to us. And the 2 stayed a lot further back. I look at the guru, and his eyes are still closed. He's still in a meditative state. And then soon one of the craft, because it wasn't, I mean, from far away it did look like an orb, but when it was coming closer and closer, you could kind of see it looked a lot like the Carlos Diaz lights. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that story.
I've heard about it.
But this kind of craft, based off of my interpretation of how it looked, it wasn't all nuts and bolts. It looked somewhat organic. Like, it had very soft edges. It was a beautiful, like, orange yellow, and but it was still kind of a traditional saucer shaped, but like more curved, right? Because again, it wasn't just nuts and bolts. It had this sense of just like you just felt like it was organic in some sense. So that was mind-blowing. I had never encountered this. I wasn't into the UFO topic yet, thoroughly. So I'm thinking, what's going on? And one of the guys was like, what the heck is in the sky? And we all look up and we're in shock, right? But then soon after, the craft goes back to the other 2 crafts, and then they disappear in a blink of an eye. Like, we've heard so many stories. You see it one moment, next moment, it's gone.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
And then we look at the guru there. He opens his eyes, and I'm going to be paraphrasing here, but it was very profound. And he practically stated, "Those things that you saw, they're as close to family as we are here." And anyone could interpret that however they want to. I think for every person that was sitting here, it was like 6 or 7 of us in total, we all interpreted it completely different. But from that moment onward, we didn't really talk about it. And if anything, we agreed amongst our group that we were not going to talk about it publicly, because it was such an experience that no matter how best I can explain it, you wouldn't feel what we felt. Right? That kind of like shock or an awe, unless you had an experience of your own, or unless you were there. And when it comes to the work that I do, I really try not to allow my experiences or my opinions affect the data that I collect and that I provide to the public. Because I have 2 shows, one of them called Shifting the Paradigm, and the other one called Mysteries with a History. Yes. And both of these require a lot of research. And like I had said earlier, depending on your already preconceived ideas, your research is going to reflect that information that you're going to go ahead and provide. So I don't openly talk about my experiences or my experience. It's only been one, just because it can also cause other people to be like, oh man, she's an experiencer. She has no idea what she's talking about. She's going to go ahead and feed me some fluff that they're all happy beings and they're all here to help us or something like that, right? Which that could be the case. I don't know, but I think the biggest thing, and like what Avi Loeb says, and he's such a great man. He says we need to remain humble. We always need to remain humble, no matter the experiences that we have, no matter how many degrees that we have, or what we've seen or something like that. We need to always make sure that our perspectives are in check and that we remain humble regardless of what happens. Yeah. And that's just like a brief story.
That's amazing. It's. Do you think it helped you in the road to YouTube, your YouTube career? Do you think it actually it just pushed you a wee bit?
At the moment that it happened, and for the years to come after that, it was something that I honestly didn't reflect on. Just because during that time we were there in India, we were also experiencing, and we were also having certain kinds of like lectures, I guess like spiritual teachings from the guru at the time, stating no matter what happens, no matter what goes on in your life, you shouldn't attach to it. You shouldn't make it you shouldn't put on another layer of your of who you are just because you had an experience, if that kind of makes sense what I'm saying.
I understand.
So
I do
so
understand.
with that, when we saw these three craft, it was shocking at the moment, but then soon after we're like, it's just another day in the life. It's totally okay.
I
It's
think
not a
it's
big
amazing.
deal.
I
But
think it's
then,
amazing.
oh, I mean, looking back on it now, with the knowledge that I have to date from all the research that I've done, yes, it's pretty fantastic. But I simply cannot allow my experiences to affect
Exactly.
anything here in today's world and what I'm doing with the shows and stuff.
Bill, your shows are amazing. Give you another
Thank you.
compliment again. So I'm going to hand you over to my co-host here. What have you got?
So, obviously, no matter if you're an experiencer or a full-on skeptic, everyone can essentially agree that when it comes to just about anything you might encounter, there's going to be 1,000 different ways that it can happen.
Yeah.
So, what would be your advice to someone who wants to take up starting to research these types of things, with that being in mind?
That's a great question. And something that I would have to say to those that are just jumping into the subject, like right off the bat, would be do not believe everything you read or everything that people tell you on YouTube. Because even though we might think that YouTubers are experts, they're not experts, myself included. I'm no expert. I am learning every single day with my audience and with those that I speak to. So I think that would be my first, biggest rule. And then on top of that, with the UFO phenomenon, there are so many paths you can take. You can take the historical path, the scientific path, the spiritual path, and whoever knows whichever other one you want to take. But I think that when you're first starting out, and if you haven't had an experience, I think starting off with the really good foundation of evidence that has been provided to the public, either by witnesses or by researchers, that's the best place to start. So going through your history, going through, is it actually possible for these things to happen based off the technology that we have and based off of those that have done the research when it comes to the UFO phenomenon? Because when you're entering and this is my opinion, when you're entering the more spiritual path, the experiencer path, the abductee path, it's a lot more anecdotal. I think it's more difficult to grasp because it's not usually tangible for those that are just jumping into the topic and don't know where to look. It can be very confusing. But if you start with the history, you can literally take notes and the dates and the people and the little bits and pieces here and there that'll be reoccurring throughout future, I guess not future, but other historical accounts. That would be my best advice, is to start there and then make your way down when you feel comfortable or if something tells you, something kind of nudges you over to another aspect.
But I used to do a lot of research. The last company I used to do a lot of research, and people would come to me and they would be like, "Oh, this location, it was mostly paranormal. This location was totally haunted. Totally haunted. It was demonic. It was everything." So I would research that place. There's nothing there. You would even go to the location. It just shows you don't believe everything you see on YouTube, because there was one video. Oh, this place is a demonic haunting, there's evil demons here, they're coming to get you. I researched it and I found that the people that owned the building actually put out fake videos to make people think to come. I can actually talk about it. It was near Scotland, it was near Loch Lomond, it was a haunted pub, and I dug and dug and dug through it, and I found out that it was all faked. It was all faked. Just so as people would go and stay there.
For profit.
Mm-hmm.
And because of those stories, because of those hoaxes or for those frauds, ones that create the stories, it ruins it for everyone. And that's why the paranormal, the supernatural, and the UFO phenomenon have so much stigma behind it. Where people are like, everything is fake. What you see, that's a drone. What you see, that's CGI. That ghost over there, it's actually my friend that stomped on the floor. And it's because of those people, those few people have ruined it for everyone. And
They have.
the nice thing is that it's slowly picking back up, especially with the Pentagon releasing everything that it has. It's slowly picking back up to be becoming more. What's the word I want to use?
I've totally lost for.
But like I guess acceptable, right?
Yeah,
versus
acceptable,
10, 20, 30 years ago, where these hoaxes were a lot more for giggles, right? Being like, oh, haha, you fell for it. When now it's becoming more like, this could actually happen.
That's what I have noticed. I mean, as I was saying about 20 years ago, when they talked about it on the news, bring up the news, they'd be all chuckling and laughing, and then when they started showing the stuff that came with the Navy, I think it was the US Navy, they were tracking this thing, the 2 fighter jet pilots were tracking this thing, and they were talking about it. They were quite serious. But then again, how do we know that's real? Unless you...
We don't. We don't. And even with the Pentagon, right? Like we still don't know if that information that has been provided, which what they have provided in the preliminary report is stating, out of the 144 cases that we have solved, that we saw, only one was solved, and it was actually a balloon. Right, when you have 143 cases that they simply clarify that they do not know what it is. Yes. So again, even I feel like that's a lot more acceptable than stating all 144 cases were either balloons or drones or things that are explainable. Instead, they stated, we do not know. And I think that's a great step for all of us to go ahead and say that the UFO phenomenon, the paranormal, the supernatural can be something that can be taken seriously.
Yeah, it's like you people that go to like Area 51, right? And they're like, oh look, it's a UFO. That could be a US military black budget secret spy plane that they've built, right? That's where the stealth bomber was built, and all the other ones were built, and they were all thought to be UFOs, and they all turned out to be secret weapons. I do think some of it is real, but a lot of it is faked. I do think a lot of it is faked, just for YouTube purposes and, well, secret technology. Dakota.
And we don't know it. And I think that's probably the hardest part about being a part of the UFO phenomenon is it's very difficult to decipher what is true and what is not true, or what is black projects. We don't know.
Exactly.
Now, here's one example that I give people. It's like, I normally wouldn't go too far into certain UFO reports because I'm in Idaho. There's a lot of Air Force bases here. They're always flying projects. In fact, a few months back, they were running drills at one of the bases here. And I know this because I have a lot of family contacts in local law enforcement, and they know I do this type of thing. A lot of people were calling in swearing up and down that because they would see all these lights in the sky and helicopters dropping bombs, that War of the Worlds was happening.
Yeah.
I was just like, no, they're running drills, and local news media didn't put out the press notice to tell people, don't freak out when you hear things exploding. That's literally what happened. But there's still so much there, and I honestly think that where a lot more of the reports coming out, especially recent days, are getting harder to fully say it's faked or misinterpreted in some way.
I have to agree with you on that, and I think it's so important for those that have the information. For example, it's unfortunate that the media didn't go ahead and clarify that there were going to be testings at the time, because that can lead to so much misinterpretation of what's going on, and that can be so much more deadly knowing a lie than knowing the truth.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's been a great interview tonight, hasn't it, Dakota? It's been absolutely amazing. Cristina, thank you for coming on the show. It's been really good. Can you tell us where to find some of your channels?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on, guys. It's been an absolute blast. First off, it's a lot easier. I have a Beacons page, which links all of my social media on there, which is a lot like Linktree, but I think Beacons page is just better. but there you can find everything. My website is paradigmshifts.blog, and then my Twitter is eyes_on_the_skies, where I place a lot of my updates of what's coming on. So a lot of good shows are happening right now. I am a part of the KUNX radio talk radio show on Tuesdays. For when this airs, Tuesday I had Ross Coulthart, an Australian journalist, and that was fantastic. And then on Thursdays I have Mysteries with the History, where I cover usually things that fall under the UFO and the paranormal. UFO, paranormal, and supernatural topics that we still can't decipher if they're true or not. But for those that are just jumping into the topic, it's so important to go ahead and just be exposed to it so that you can come up with your own conclusions on what you believe could actually be. And then on Fridays, I'm a part of the Debrief Media. So there I post news roundups every single Friday.
I must admit your channel is awfully good, because I was listening to one. It was the Montauk boys you were talking about, and I found that so fascinating. It was just so fascinating, and it's of course your co-host was telling us how to cook noodles or something like that in his microwave, which I found very interesting.
Someone called it prison food. You got ramen, you got chili. I'm like, that does not sound good. But I couldn't tell him that. So I'm just like, I
was sitting with my earphones on, and I was sitting researching, because I forgot to do a show for Christmas and that, and I was researching Krampus actually, and he started talking about his noodles, his ramen noodles, and I was like, that sounds quite good. That's
Well, the reason is because Jimmy Church from Fade to Black, we talk about ramen a lot, because that's what I eat. Especially for those that have been in college or that are in college, you know what it's like living on a budget, right? And ramen only cost me 30 cents, and it tastes so good. Like, I love ramen, so him and I always talk about it. And when he finally brought it up that he puts chili on his ramen, I'm thinking, cool, like that's great.
Yeah. I found it really good. Plus I got a recipe. He should actually think of bringing his own cookery program. I better not give my ideas. Oh my god! No, honestly, thank you so much for coming on our show. Honestly,
thank you for having me.
Yeah. Dakota.
Yes, it's been a great show. Try to get you back on sometime again, because there's obviously so much to this that we can cover that an hour just does not just do justice.
It doesn't. It's.
I know all about it. I do.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to your show tonight. Glad we're watching it.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Catch you later, guys. Bye.
See you. Bye. And.